we've had a nice little foundation of the origins, the landscape, where we started from, with the political, social, cultural threads that gave birth to this concept and this articulating this phenomena. Let's talk now about how cool has evolved. As we've identified, cool evolves in line with the movements of the zeitgeist. The word zeitgeist being a German word meaning time, spirit, literally the spirit of the time. Let's talk, Joel, about your perspective on the changes, the evolution of cool from the 20th century to the 21st. And also, as we know, one of the major factors was the internet, the world becoming a global village with access moving beyond our small communities, our neighborhoods, and our immediate social circles. When you open up the lid of the restriction, the restraint that held the potency within the niche that defined cool is only this, when you open up the global village, you start to see a natural evolution. Tell us a little bit about what you've seen, and I really am very interested in this shift in the paradigm between the masculine and feminine. Of course, I love that. Talk to me. Tell me about it.
Yeah, no, this is sort of a big question that takes a lot of years. Meaning, there's a lot of years in which this happens.
Yeah.
So I think that cool remains sort of authentic and organic until the 80s. Meaning, people know what it is, and advertising agencies are going to try to make you think you can buy it and sort of make you think you're cool in certain ways. That's definitely happening in the 70s. But in general, the conceptual matrix by which people think about cool is still pretty organic and underground and up to people searching for it, right? And that changes in the 80s for a lot of reasons. First of all, it changes from my point of view, because I'm a music writer most of all. It changes because of MTV. Because once music becomes a visual medium, this changes the nature of how we access music. Secondly, at almost the same time, we get the Walkman. And the Walkman is actually almost more important because we get the first privatizing of our musical enjoyment. Like before that, you're playing records with your friends, or you're playing records and showing them with your friends, or you're going to concerts and clubs, right? And now you're watching songs and judging them by their short film nature, and you're listening on your own with your headphones as you walk around, which also means you're blocking out your environment. And that actually is more of a revolution in terms of where we are now than even MTV was in a lot of ways. But both of those sort of happen musically. That changes a lot of things. I mean, there's clubbing and it matters. And, I'm not saying people stop listening to music, but I am saying those were big shifts.
Oh, huge. Yes. And taste, would you say that was the introduction or the next level of personal taste becoming a concept, because we have an individualized experience of creative expression?
Right. So you have everybody curating, like the whole idea that you are individually curating things for yourself and for other people. Yeah. That's mostly the 80s, right? Again, in the 70s, you listen to, you listen to FM radio, because FM radio was where
it was a collective experience. Yep. Yeah.
Again, that's sort of public, collective, shared. Even when you're in a different place than your friend, you're still listening to the same radio station, right? And that all collapses in the 80s too, like FM radio as sort of what it was sort of collapses too. And it gets bought up, and conglomerates buy the radio stations, they buy the TV stations, and they buy the movie studios, and all of these kind of giant mergers in the 80s is that period of mergers and acquisitions really does collapse the culture into a more narrow kind of view. Now, there's a ton of indie movies and indie music being made. Agreed. But the ways in which one finds and thinks of himself as cool loses its sort of the public subculture of it, right? So in the way that we had a jazz subculture, and we had beats, and we had hippies, in ways that was kind of unified, right? Now we have like many subcultures. We have punks and goths and, all kinds of, and so you go to where you find your community, but there's no longer any sense of what is unified in cool. And in fact, I think the 80s, and I'm sure I could get letters for this if such a thing happened, or comments, on this video. I think the 80s were the least cool decade in the past 100 years.
Fair. Yep, got it. Fine.
Right. In
Yep.
terms of cultural production, right? I mean, if you're going to evaluate between what, popular culture comes out in the 70s and the 90s and the 60s, and even into this century, the 80s were not a great moment. From my point of view, certainly not at the level of like pop and consensus, right? Like I can name you 5 great rock bands off the top of my head, but none of them were actually sort of, publicly reached the kind of place that anybody in the 60s or 70s did. So, the Replacements or the Minutemen or, anybody like that. It's like, they had their fans.
Do you mean, would you say the depth of the work produced in the 80s, it wasn't as deep as the years before?
I actually
less credibility, less authenticity. That like you're giving me your perspective on this right now, and is it something like that, Joel?
I am mostly saying that. Yes.
Yeah.
I thought there was less. I'm not sure I'm saying it was less authentic, but I think there was less depth. Across
it was Duran. It was Dire Straits. It was
right. Yeah, exactly.
Got it.
Right. And it's a certain sensibility, and I'm not complaining that did not have its own place or wasn't great. Yeah. I'm just saying I don't think it had the depth of the 1945 to 1980 moment as it concerns cool.
Sure.
Right.
Yep.
So also the 80s is the moment when all advertising goes all in on how to make people think they're cool and how to advertise cool.
Yeah.
I will say the one thing that makes me feel good, I've been teaching my History of Cool course for more than 25 years. And none of my students think you can buy cool. Like the least cool students don't think that you could become cool by any kind of purchase. Yeah. Whether they're clothes or whether they're, consuming certain music or art, they don't really think that. And I like that. But I will say, as I all tell them when I do I do an objects of cool lesson, right? Leather jackets, sunglasses, motorcycles, right? Yeah. I say, look, you will all look cooler in a leather jacket. It's just true. I don't care who you are. Go buy a leather jacket. Everybody needs one. You will look cooler no matter how uncool you are.
Yeah.
So that's my sort of exception to the rule.
And perhaps what you would say is, get the leather jacket, you will look cool, and then learn how to embody the spirit of what it is to be cool, right? Cool is spiritual. Cool is a choice. Cool is all right. Honestly, I do believe it's quite metaphysical in certain ways. Yeah.
I want to respond to that in a way that is not chronologically where we are, but yes, I do say some version of what you just said. I said, look, the old thing like, the clothes make the man, right? That phrase, right? No, actually the person makes the clothes, right? Yeah. So find a leather jacket that's right for you. And if you don't know, go with a friend who does, right? And then take your time to figure out how to wear it. It's not like looking in the mirror. It's just a matter of like how you feel good in it.
It's a feeling. Right? Yeah.
It's like, that's what you want. Yeah. But to get to your metaphysical thing, so I didn't speak about this earlier. The thing that is actually African, West African and cool, like the part that is African-American, is that there are 35 languages in West and Central Africa that have a concept that would basically translate as spiritual cool or spiritual calm. And it's about a person. And there is no etymological precedent for that concept that I know of in English. And so there is this notion that when I said earlier that person in the room who's kind of cool, who's everybody afraid of, and sort of that way, that person is a way in which you think that person is kind of otherworldly calm, right? It's a spiritual cool that either the person earned through experience or got some sort of temperament, or they know what their resources are. But that person in that room attracts like a magnet other people because that person is the one who has the calm spirit that is not a try hard in any way. Right? And that part is spiritual. And I will go further and say, I agree with you that it's metaphysical. The spiritual part is how it's embodied and how people can see and feel it. The metaphysical part is what part of this is philosophical, right? So I know, for example, that I talk way too much to be cool in that kind of classic, calm, silent way, right? That being said, right, I have known since I've been studying this, which is 30 years now, that I study this because I want to be cooler. And I mean cooler in the metaphysical, spiritual way.
I know what you mean. Yes, yes.
The other kinds of ways. And because we all know that the things we study are things we need for ourselves. That's why we're willing to spend the time on it, right? And so, but that's what I learned early on, because a man named Robert Farris Thompson, who was an art historian and an Africanist, he did all that work about cool in West Africa. And I met him late in his career and I read all his work and I said, oh, that's the real root of African-American part in jazz, right? And a lot of people know this, it's in some of the books, right? That there are these several words that mean spiritual calm or spiritual cool. So what the jazz musicians did was they made sure that when they played on stage, that their bodies were relaxed, that no matter what their instrument was doing, and it could be actually very excited and shrill and whatever it was doing, they looked completely calm and relaxed playing it. So you have this great visual tension of this very sort of relaxed body and persona and this really exciting music. And that was very compelling.
Beautiful. Contrast, tension. Yeah, hot. Hey, shall we talk now about the shift from the 20th century to the 21st with your overlay of the masculine to the feminine? I think that is very on the zeitgeist at the moment. I'm seeing a whole, I agree with your proposition in terms of that. All the signals are telling us that. So I'd love to hear more about that, because that's quite political. That's quite edgy. The idea of
we need to get to this now. So I'm gonna start by boiling it down, and then we will open it up.
Yeah, however you like. Yep.
So in the 20th century, so what happens is cool moves from the streets to some extent, from being in public to being online, to being on the internet, to being in shared communities that are about connection. So to some extent, cool in the 20th century is rebellion and male in a sort of way that is sometimes suggestive of violence or at least defiance. And cool in the 21st century is about connection and belonging and making community, which is kind of gendered as female, even though of course it's not, but it is. And so when you go from a setting that is the streets, hence we have the words like street cred, right? Streetwise, street cred, all of those things don't have the same impact they used to. Like, it still works. It's still good if you have street cred, right? It's important. But in the 20th century, you had to have street cred and you had to be streetwise, right? I mean, in American Cool, the first 4 women who identify as cool in a new way were all musicians in the 1970s. It was Patti Smith and Deborah Harry and Bonnie Raitt and Chrissie Hynde. And for me, they're like the first public badass women, right?
For sure.
And partly the reason is they lead bands, they have to do it on stage, but all of them, total street cred. They came up on the streets, in scenes, and that's the thing, right? So, but in a sense, that's still a male aesthetic that they came and kind of redirected. So we go from the streets to being tech savvy and being communicative online and knowing how to communicate online through screens and through text, et cetera, right? So then for both 20th and 21st century, the word that still unites cool is authenticity, right? People want to think that the person they're experiencing is authentic. They are who they are all the way down, right? I always use the phrase perceived authenticity. And the reason I use that is we don't really know these people. It's like, I would like to trust myself and say what I am seeing is an authentic person, but I do not know them, right? And so I have to throw the word perceived authenticity, and that's the one thing. Maybe there's 2 things, right? There's rebellion and authenticity, and that's true in every zeitgeist.
Yeah.
There has to be something new that you're doing that is rebelling against something that young people need. And there has to be something authentic, like you're not doing this for show, you're not doing this for money, you're doing this as an expression that sometimes you don't even know, but you feel it enough that it shows your power and your dynamic, and it shows your own need to it, and people are attracted to it. Now, the real difference between 20th and 21st century cool, and then there's more, but I want to get this off, is what I call aspirational versus relatable cool.
Yes, big one. Yes, let's do it. Yep.
So when I was first teaching and I realized, I do this exercise on day one all the time, who's cool and why, right? And I'm like asking students without knowing anything, going in, right? Who do you think is cool? Tell me why.
Yeah.
And the first time, this is about 20 years ago, that I heard more than one person say relatable, which was not even a word that people used.
No, that's
generationally.
New. Yep.
I went, relatable? Why would that be important?
Yeah.
Right?
It was in fact the opposite. Wouldn't you say
exactly.
It's the opposite, not relatable, untouchable. Yeah, go on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like Muhammad Ali is not relatable to me, right? That's not where we're at, right? So that's what I realized in the 20th century, the figures who were cool avatars, right, were people who you were not trying to be them and you were not thinking they were relatable. You knew they were showing a path that was important to you. So they were trailblazers, and you aspired to be the kinds of things they were, right? Rebellious, powerful, talented, dynamic, etc. But there was no plane on which you thought they were relatable or that you thought that was important, right? And so relatable was a new thing, right? And it remains a key aspect, and I'm not judging it. It's just how the zeitgeist works. And it's much more important to how you interact now that social media and the internet has changed our lives than it was when your life was sort of done in public and people are relatable. So as soon as major celebrities began to have Twitter accounts that they would tweet every day, I would go, all right, well, cool is about to collapse, right? The whole idea was these people were, they were icons on Mount Rushmore. I didn't want to hear them talk about what they had for lunch. And I didn't want to hear them talk about what they did that day, right? It's like, that's not what I want to hear.
Yeah.
That is totally different in the 21st century, right? So that's one set of things that are different. But I want to get to sort of, the people who represent this really. So when Twitter happens and Facebook happens, it collapses the distance between us and our cool avatars.
Yeah, I watched it happen. Yeah. I watched that emergence in real time.
So that distance used to be there, and now it's not. Now we have a much more small d democratic thing in which you want, and to some extent, Taylor Swift's the greatest example of this, in the sense that I think her fans view her as being, if not the best version of themselves, some version of themselves.
Sure.
Right? Yep. And that, again, is fairly new, right? So it's no accident that all the people with the largest Instagram accounts are all women. I don't know that men crack the top 5 except for Donald Trump, which will be aside, right? So it's Taylor Swift, and it's Beyonce, and it's Selena Gomez, and it's Rihanna, and it's Kim Kardashian, and their fan bases think of themselves as fan bases, right? The Swifties, etc. They think of themselves as communities, and the point is that to some extent, that entire idea that what you do in the 21st century as a certain avatar of cool, who has all the other stuff, authenticity, autonomy, aesthetic excellence, artistic production, is it's meant to be shared in a sense. And that's part of how cool works, that it's shared as opposed to sort of the figure and if not the followers.
The separation.
Well, the guide and
and looking up to, the aspiration, looking up to versus looking
right?
as a peer, as a relatable figure. Sure,
Right. So on the one hand is rebellion, on the other hand, we have connection, right? Um, and then how that falls down is, so when you have aspirational cool, someone like me, and for me, my guy was Springsteen. I mean, I had a lot of guys, but my real sort of guy,
Yeah.
you don't have a relationship to the icon. Like that person's aura, their mystery, their musical production is part of the connection that is spiritual and metaphysical and important to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now it's the accessibility, right? It's Instagram and it's Twitter, and you want to know them better, and you want to know they're people like you, except they have done their 10,000 hours and they want to share that with you, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You cannot discuss this, and I'm sure you don't. You cannot discuss and understand cool without an understanding of whatever the mediascape was for that generation.
Of course. Absolutely.
So,
Yes.
to
Yeah.
go from, so in the generation that has 3 TV networks, right? And some FM radio stations,
Yep.
and movies, but no cable stations and no TV, there's a lot of consensus because everyone sees the same thing, right? So, whether it is like, Bob Dylan or the Beach Boys or Jimi Hendrix, anyone paying attention knows of those folks. And then there are cult figures, the Frank Zappas of the world, et cetera. But once you have 24/7 media, and once you have thousands of channels, now you have all kinds of boutique niches, right? And you can find it. And then you find your audience and you find your people. That's one thing, right? What's the mediascape?
Yep.
And as we said, Twitter and Facebook collapsed the distance that we had in the 20th century from our cool avatars. The next important thing is money, which is to say, not money, but selling out. So in the 20th century, it was very important for your cool figure not to sell out commercially.
Huge.
Like it was a big controversy when there were first corporate sponsors for Rolling Stones tours or et cetera. And Neil Young had this great song, "This Note's for You," because he refused to have a corporate sponsor, right? So to be anti-capitalist, to basically say, I make music, I make art, I do what I do, and if it makes money, that's important to me, but I'm not going to do it if it questions whether I have autonomy over my material and over how you see me, right? So that all changes in the 21st century, right? For a lot of reasons. Our lives are a lot more fragile. It's just true. You cannot depend on money, and you may never have enough of it, right? So now we have what I call selling in. And I don't mean it as an insult. I mean it in every way. So instead of selling out being a requirement of cool, now selling in, even to have corporate sponsors or whatever it is, it burnishes your cool. Like making more money makes you cooler. Making brands want you as their spokesman makes you cooler, right? So wealth and brand is greater cool. And to some extent, this was all pioneered by hip hop stars.
Absolutely.
It's not like it hadn't happened previously, but
Yeah.
they totally brought that into being.
Yeah, the bag. Yeah.
So in the 20th century, and this is a disturbing one for me, we really thought any person can be cool in a small way. It didn't mean you had to be a great artist. It just mean there were people you knew who said, that guy's cool, or that woman's cool. And now I have seen that young people find it hard to believe someone is cool who is not a public, who's not a celebrity, right? In a sense, cool for them is reserved for celebrities. I mean, they would say, yeah, she's cool, but they mean she's cool with me, like I like her. They don't really mean she's cool like I think of that person as cool. And in the 20th century, we all knew people like that. Like I would say, that guy's cool, right? And that usually meant, I don't know much about him. And, but, that guy, I mean, to use a very colloquial phrase, that guy's got it going on. And however he does that is good. So what I'm saying is that fandom is totally different, right? So in the 20th century, with musicians and actors and athletes, it's based on talent and aesthetic and personal style, a unique personal style. That's still sort of true, but in the 21st century, it's about what they call parasocial relationships. What is your relationship to this icon, right? None of us had relationships to our icons in the 20th century. None of us cared about it, right? I mean, you could become a groupie, or you could follow the Grateful Dead. But for the most part, that's not how we thought about it.
It was still a
right?
clear separation between artist and audience, whereas now there's a merging. Yeah, the parasocial merge.
And
Yeah,
so though that's for me, that's the breakdown of how I see 20th century and 21st century cool.
totally.
And it's also why the biggest celebrities and the most important, even in my, musicians, are women. It's like the breakthrough figures of the moment. I mean, the youngest ones, Billie Eilish, Olivia Rodrigo,
Yeah.
Rosalia, like these are breakthrough rebel artists.
Yep.
I have a hard time thinking of young men who are who are analogous.
Mm.
So when I say that I think cool is in the hands of women, I mean two things. I mean, first of all, that I think we're getting to a distinctly female cool.
Mm-hmm.
We're not there yet, and I don't know how to define it, although I'm sure I'll try when it comes around.
No,
but
it's coming through, Joel. Oh, I love this. I'm getting like a feeling in my being around it.
Happening,
Yes, it's
right?
coming through. Yep.
And in fact, I wrote in American Cool in the intro essay 10, 12 years ago, I wrote that if cool is going to survive, it'll be in the hands of women. And I named a series of women at the time I thought might bring it in, and they did not. But
Really?
I think it's happening now.
Wow.
Well,
yeah.
A lot of them didn't because they were actresses, and the pressures in Hollywood are too much. Like I was sure, and I still think Jennifer Lawrence is cool, but I was sure she was going to be like a really cool, independent, autonomous figure.
Sure.
And I don't think that has turned out to be true because I think the pressures of Hollywood are really, really difficult. And so there are older actresses who are cool, but it's really tough to be a younger actress and survive sort of that gauntlet. Because even the ones earlier, like I thought Winona Ryder had a shot, and she didn't, right? But I mean, she came back recently. But
she came back straight, like the shoplifting. That was that seemed like a bad mark on her report card. But then the Stranger Things piece later in life kind of then, to me, lace them together. Like, yeah, she's a bad bitch. Like, I mean, we could sit down all day and talk about whether we think Winona Ryder is cool or not.
She lost the middle years, right?
Definitely. A fall from grace. Absolutely. Yeah.
So, in my class, I teach Heathers because I think Heathers, the movie,
right.
First of all, the entire movie is a meditation on cool, right?
Yeah.
In which Jason Dean wears all of, motorcycle, leather jacket, tough, all that.
Yeah.
He's a psychopath, right?
Yeah.
But Winona Ryder is the first female character in Hollywood film who is actively trying to figure out how to be cool in the deep spiritual way. And she mostly succeeds on a teenage level.
Sure.
And but that Winona Ryder did not quite make it. She didn't make it through her 20s. She did not make it. What that was, the promise of who she was in that movie, did not become the cool persona or that independent cool woman she could have been in her 20s and 30s. And I name a couple other women, but she's the best example because she makes Heathers. And that movie is about that.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So anyway, that's my not short enough 21st versus 21st century thing.